Greetings and salutations, young true believers. Today we're going to talk about death. Philosophers, like everyone else, they've mused about death for as long as there's been philosophy. Um, One of the philosophers who wrote extensively about death in the ancient world was a Roman philosopher named Lucretius, and Lucretius comes up with what is known as Lucretius's puzzle. And Lucretius's puzzle is an argument that goes thusly: why should we be afraid of death when we already have a fairly good idea of what death will be like? So, what's Lucretius talking about? Well, Lucretius asks, why are you afraid of the long period of non-existence after you die, but you're not afraid, conversely, of the long period of non-existence before you were born? So we've already experienced a long period of non-existence. It's the moment before we were conceived or before we were born. Death will be more of the same. In that long period before you were born, you didn't experience anything, and certainly not pain. In a long period of non-existence after you die, you presumably will revert to that same state, and there won't be any experience of any kind. So, in short, then, death is nothing to fear. Now, again, as always, let's put this in some historical cultural context. Lucretius was writing at a time when your average life expectancy was about 35, 40, maybe a little less, actually, probably closer to 30. Um, Most people at that time didn't make it to their fifth birthday because they died of things that are easily preventable now, right? And water wasn't always safe to drink, etc. Um, So people were very concerned about this. Look, I'm only going to live 30 years. I'm very afraid to die. I want to, you know, you barely get to experience anything. You barely make it to adulthood, and you die. And Lucretius was trying to find a way to comfort people. So this is Lucretius's puzzle, right? Why fear the long period of non-existence after you die when you don't fear the long period of non-existence before you were born? So fast forward to 21st century, there's a Harvard philosopher named Shelley Kagan, and I've included a Philosophy Bites interview with him on speciesism, but I might go ahead and include the Philosophy Bites interview with Kagan on death, because he talks about Lucretius's puzzle specifically. And Kagan disagrees with Lucretius. He thinks there is reason to fear death. His argument goes thusly. In the long period before you were born, you were experiencing a term. Philosophers make up terms all the time. He calls it schmoss, right? Schmoss is a period of not having something that you have a reasonable anticipation of having in the future. So, in that long period before you were born, you had schmoss for all the good things that you would experience in life. Now, obviously, this is problematic because in that long period before you were born, you weren't experiencing anything, right? Um, but you had a reasonable expectation, goes the argument, that you would experience the good things in life. Now, Kagan argues, when, as the years march on, right, we have an increased expectation, or a diminished expectation, I should say, a diminished expectation of more and more good things happening. And we begin to fear the loss of life precisely because we will be deprived of the good things that we experienced in life. So it is reasonable, then, on Kagan's view, to fear death, right? Um, and he offers up a thought experiment. It was first proposed by an English philosopher named Derek Parfit. So Parfit asks you to imagine that you need to have a life-saving operation, but there's a problem. The problem is you're going to have to be awake during the operation, because you must point the doctors at precisely where you're feeling the pain. Otherwise, they won't be able to successfully perform the surgery. So the surgery is a relatively quick surgery. It's about 10 minutes. It's a life-saving surgery, but during it, you're going to be in agony, and there's no choice. You've got to show the doctors exactly where the pain is. But here's the silver lining in that cloud. After the operation, they're going to give you a drug that's going to eliminate the previous 24 hours of your memory, so you won't have any recollection of the pain. So Parfit asks you to imagine you come to in the operator, or in the in your hospital room, right? And You don't know whether or not you've already had the surgery or if you're about to have the surgery. And a nurse walks in and you ask her, "Hey, a nurse, have I had the surgery yet or am I about to?" And she says, "Well, it's been a busy day. Let me go check the chart." And she leaves. And Parfit asks, "What do you want her answer to be when you come back?" And obviously, the answer that you want is, "Oh, you already had the surgery." And the reason is, Parfit argues, we don't fear past pain as much as we fear future pain, right? The pain that we have not experienced. There's something about anticipating pain or suffering that's even worse than actually experiencing it to a certain degree. And he thinks this is why we're so necrophobic. That is to say, we fear death, right? Um, I would offer this counter argument, however, to Kagan and to Parfit. Um, while it's true that from a perspective of, and most of you are in your 20 something, some of you late teens, right? Um, you have an abundance of life to look forward to, right? And even at my age, I'm 45, there's still plenty to look forward to. But now imagine you're 95, right? And even if you're a reasonably healthy 95, you still have your mental faculties. How much more is there to anticipate? Now let's change the parameters of the experiment, right? The thought experiment. You're 95 and you're bedridden, right? Or you're in a wheelchair or you're living in a nursing home, right? Is it really the case that you're thinking about all the, oh, I don't want to die. I'll miss out on all the good things in life, right? Or are you thinking, well, all right, I've lived my life, it was a good life, but now it's time to go. I think what happens is at some point life becomes more of a burden than a proverbial blessing, and people would want to depart rather than hang around. Um, one quick consideration, and this goes back to the German philosopher, 19th century German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who got me interested in philosophy. A lot of people tend to be afraid of death because they suspect or they believe, they have faith, right, that an eternal punishment awaits them for some transgression, right? You're going to go to hell, right? Well, Schopenhauer has an excellent argument to the effect that there can't possibly be a hell, right? And his argument goes thusly: if we posit that there is a God, there is an all good, all knowing, all powerful God, right? Then what that means is that God is morally superior to human beings, right? God would, by definition, because God is all good, not do something that is harmful, or what's more, um, God would not be, as human beings are, interested in revenge. And I know Scripture says vengeance is mine, etc. But consider, if you're all good, right, and you're God, and you really are wholly good, God would presumably, like human beings, but all the more so, be interested in justice, not revenge. Revenge is an emotion. It's an emotional state that human beings experience when they've been wronged and they want to revisit that wrong upon someone else. Now, let's consider the nature of punishment. What's the purpose of punishment? The purpose of punishment is not revenge. The purpose of punishment, and justice by extension, is to ensure that someone will not repeat the mistake that they made in the past, and that there's uh, ample restitution for the wrong that's been done. Not excessive, right? We're not talking about pound of flesh or anything like that. But if you wrong someone, you pay a just compensation, right? So, what would be the point then of a punishment that lasts for eternity, a punishment for the transgressions of a finite life? That doesn't seem to be consistent with justice, and it certainly doesn't seem to be consistent with the nature of an all-good God. That, Schopenhauer points out, would be revenge, not justice. That's not worthy of a God, right? So there's no reason to fear damnation or hell, right? But again, I encourage you to watch the Crash Course in Philosophy video on perspectives on death, and I'll post the Kagan interview. Don't check in on July 4th. That's that's a holiday, and I will see you on Monday then.